Hey everyone, Max Clyde here. Thought I'd give you my 2 cents about Tower of Fantasy, the new kid on the block in terms of these action RPG gacha games that are similar to Genshin Impact. Is it worth your time? Is it another Genshin Impact clone? Here's what I think. I did play Genshin Impact when it first came out, and I played it a lot. I spent so much time on it, and it wasn't my first gacha game. I think it was a very good game, but it being a gacha game hurt its potential a lot. Gacha games, by definition, seek to get the most out of you. They do everything to basically psychologically manipulate you into spending money on the game that you wouldn't have spent had it been a regular release single player or multiplayer game. So they're trying to get you to spend, or they're trying to earn more than the $60 that you would pay for a AAA game, or now probably $70 on PS5 and these current gen games. But the point is, that's what they try to do, and they often succeed, and they earn a lot doing it. Genshin Impact, I think, has become one of the most profitable games out there. This is why I think it's such a shame, because a game like Genshin Impact has a lot of potential. The world in that game is well designed and the exploration is fun. There are some unspoken of puzzles and things that you can do out in the world while exploring, such as you're running around and you see something out of place, and for example, you light up a flame here or there and you get a reward for noticing this thing that is out of place. I think it's very well made, and I think it's very well financed. More than Tower of Fantasy is, probably, or at least that's what shows. Now for Tower of Fantasy, it's been fun so far for the first few days that I've played it. I've played it on two devices, my PC, where I run GTX 1080, and on my Android Samsung Tab S7 Plus. On my tablet I did have some frame drops, but on my PC it runs much better. In terms of the story, it's not exactly amazing. It's quite cliche, in fact. I don't really like the English voice acting, but I haven't tried the Japanese just yet because I just wanna play the game without having to read subtitles too much. Some cutscenes have jarring moments without transitions, so you're standing there talking to an NPC and then all of a sudden something happens and you're like, okay, like how did we get here? A lot of what's going on isn't really explained. They try to throw in some random notes here and there, like Horizon Zero Dawn, although Horizon does a much better job at telling you what the story is through these notes and through cutscenes. But you try to piece things together in Tower of Fantasy. I mean, some of the most important information about the game's lore I've gotten from load screens, but since I'm playing on my PC, I don't get to read what's on the load screen because it goes by so fast. First world problems, huh? Anyway, bit of a humble brag there, but that's not the point. Moving on. So yeah, there are some jarring moments, but you sort of get the gist of what's going on. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward and simple, the story is. It's just these terms like Omnium and Aids of Ida, or whatever the hell they're called, and High Cross and whatever, these parties that are against each other. These are not really spoilers, so don't worry about that. In terms of combat, it might be better than Genshin. Been a while since I've played Genshin, so don't kill me if you disagree, but I think that the variety of the weapons and the combos that you can do while on the ground and in the air and press and hold, and the actual weapon skills that you have, at least they're more flashy, and I do like a good slow-mo, you know? Slow motion has always looked good in all media, pretty much, I think. In terms of the elemental interactions, I think Genshin has better elemental interactions, you know, like how you can make something wet and then freeze it, or how you can put something, like how you light things on fire, or how you electrify wet things, for example. All these interactions, which I think are inspired by Zelda, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but don't quote me on that. Though I think Zelda and Genshin are much better than Tower of Fantasy in terms of incorporating these things, especially with the surroundings. Genshin also had smarter puzzles while exploring. All the Tower of Fantasy puzzles that I've seen have been straightforward. There are a couple of jumping quests that I've seen, or jumping challenges, or whatever you want to call them, in Tower of Fantasy, and even those are rather easy as well. I clearly remember in Genshin when I started realizing the amount of thought they put into the world. There are no prompts or anything. I mentioned this a bit earlier, but you would be walking by and you think, okay, I see, for example, 3 out of 4 braziers or torches are lit. What happens if I light a 4th one? So there are no prompts. Nothing tells you that there would be a reward if you light up the 4th one, but you do get a reward. So they've thought of such things. Such an experience is non-existent in Tower of Fantasy. It's all pretty in your face. I haven't reached the end game, although I've maxed out my level as much as I can, given the day we are at, because levels are actually gated so far, so that nobody goes too much ahead in terms of leveling up in Tower of Fantasy. So I'm taking my time with things, but I do think that Tower of Fantasy is more generous. I mean, we have an SSR selector ticket, which is practically unheard of in Genshin, and I've pulled maybe 90 times. In these 90 times, I got around, well, I got 2 main SSRs. One of them is highly sought after, Samir. Samir is actually a man's name, so I'm surprised they've called him female character Samir, but I digress. I just got these 2 SSRs, Samir and Zero, and I got a bunch of good SRs, I suppose. Other than that, I got duplicates, so I think out of Samir and Zero, I got both of them 2 or 3 times in my 90 pulls. However, the game is grindy. I have fears that this is just the beginning, and like every other gacha game. Gacha or gotcha? Gotcha. Gotcha. Anyway, like every other gacha game, they try to pull you in with their generosity until you're in too deep and you end up having this sunk cost fallacy where you feel that you've spent a lot of time and effort into something and you can't get it back, so you just keep going because you think that the future may be better or it may make your actions justified. So I'm not sure if we're gonna get another SSR selector ticket or not, but I think that's good. I think how you like this game depends on your perspective and your attitude towards it. If you come into it thinking, you know what, I'm gonna be like top 10 in PvE and PvP, I think that's the wrong mindset to have in such a game, because it's gambling at the end of the day. It's just about luck and RNG in terms of what weapons you get. Luckily, so far I haven't reached a point where you absolutely have to have a certain character or weapon in order to progress, and I hope such a predatory strategy isn't employed in this game. However, that may change in the future. So yeah, you can think of it as free to play and enjoy and have fun, but if you want to be top fragging, so to speak, it's not gonna be as much fun for you, and I never condone spending so much money on gacha games, especially when you don't know for sure what you're gonna get out of it. I tried to spend $0 on such games. Maybe I'll go for the $1 or the $5 packs for beginners, but other than that, I try not to spend anything else. The game can get grindy, and it's starting to become so after level 30, but I think they have plans to open up the world map even further and add more content in the game. You know, that's how it is with these live service games in terms of the festivals and whatever events they add throughout the game's lifespan. Will I be playing this long term? Probably not. I mean, I quit Lost Ark, and I have a video on why, because so much of that game was gated behind certain things, and I hope that Tower of Fantasy isn't like that. If you're wondering about the generosity of the creators of Tower of Fantasy, I think they have to be more generous because they're trying to compete with Genshin. And people playing Genshin have been playing it for a long time, and they are well established over there in terms of the characters they have and the weapons and all. So if this game were to compete, they'd have to pull in players, and the only way they could do that is by enticing them with shiny digital characters. You do have your usual stuff of enhancing and augmenting and all these verbs to improve your weapons and characters, where you need dupes to improve them significantly. But that's probably a long-term project that you don't need right off the bat. I don't think you should expect to have all the good characters in the game. All in all, I think the game is fun. Although the puzzles are not exactly brain stimulating, the combat is fun. On PC it runs well, on the tablet and phone devices it might not, unless you have the latest and greatest. If you're playing and recording or streaming at the same time, it's gonna be worse. The quality is gonna take a hit. The story is not particularly spectacular, so it's mostly about the combat and exploration. There are some world bosses that are fun to play against, but they hit hard. They hit like a truck. You'll die 100 times while fighting some. Another problem is that some enemies are way too tanky, and the more you level up, the tankier these enemies get. You end up having to grind and grind and grind to upgrade your weapons to a suitable level until you can actually beat a certain challenge or a certain enemy. But if you're looking for a similar experience, if you like to play single player games, I think you're better off playing either Zelda Breath of the Wild or something like Phoenix Rising. What is it called? Immortals, Phoenix Rising, Phoenix Immortals Rising, you know, the game by Ubisoft. I think these are very similar in terms of what they offer.